Okay guys, this video is going to be all about the XRT build video right here. So I don't know if you've seen the X-Max build video. This thing's going to be similar to that, obviously. A little different, just the XRT, but got kind of the same stuff. So we've got the Max 5 1100 kV in there. We've got these Power Hobby LiPos right here. They're same batteries, but just we got some for this. They fit in there really well. I've already tested that out. So and then we've got these M2C parts. A little different, obviously, since it's in the XRT. I'll show you when we install them the differences between those. But yeah, so I guess we'll start off with this. So we got this thing. This thing's new right now. Haven't even driven it yet. We got this as a slider instead of just buying the XRT itself. So we got this slider off eBay. Just no tires, no body, no electronics. Since we figured we didn't really want any of that stuff anyway. Obviously, we're putting the Max 5, this AGF servo in there, Flasco GT5. So we decided to get the belted sledgehammers, same types we got in the X-Max. These were on sale a little bit. The reason I didn't get like the J-Concepts Magmas or any of the Proline tires is just because the Magmas are really heavy. I think they're like over 2 pounds each. These are heavy, but not quite that heavy. And also, they got the same offset as stock, so we don't have to get any width extenders for that. And then we've got this unbreakable body right here. So this thing's pretty sweet. We got this like special paint job on here with all these stickers. They're just old bike stickers that we found, but I think it looks pretty sweet. This body is crazy strong. This thing's not gonna break. So anyway, I think we're gonna start off with the motor mount. So we got this M2C motor mount right here. So we'll start with that and then I'll show you guys how that works. All right guys, we made a little bit of progress right here, you can see. So we got the motor mounted up here. I think I mentioned this earlier, but we don't have the gears that we're gonna run with this yet. We just got the 25 tooth pinion, 35 tooth spur from GPM. And it's got like the upgraded like motor support with like the third bearing. I'll show you that once we get it so you can kind of see what that does, but we don't have that yet. So obviously this isn't meshed it's not going to fit really. But I have this Mod 1, I think it's 25 tooth. It has a 8mm bore, so it'll fit on the motor shaft. But even with this all the way down, it wouldn't touch these teeth, or it barely touch them, but not enough. So we might, I think it comes with the high-speed gears a little bit bigger, so we might be able to mesh it up if we do that until we get those gears. But they should be here soon, so it shouldn't be too big of a problem. So yeah, you can see this looks pretty sweet in there. Got some serious support right here. But yeah, so this has this is the M2C motor mount. It's got these nice braces here on both sides. And then it's got this is the M2C rear motor brace, which looks really nice actually. If I put you back here, you might be able to see. It's got like a foam pad below the motor and just kind of supports it about 2/3 the way back. So yeah, if you got a smaller motor, I think this will work with the Hobbyman like 5690s if you want that motor. And then obviously these big motors will work too. Definitely though, if you're gonna get a motor like this, you need that rear support because, I mean, it's not gonna hold it without that, or at least not too well. So the first thing you need to do though, to install this, what we did first is, I'd recommend just putting these supports on first. They're on both sides, you can see there. So first, a little bit tricky to see how to orient them, but basically you just want this kind of like circle part that juts out a little bit. You want that at the top, and it's kind of like rounded off at the bottom down there. So that's how you want it, both sides. Make sure to put Loctite in there since you're screwing in the metal. I don't want those coming loose. You could cause some other problems. And then once you've got that, what we did is we just screwed this down. So it's just the same 4 screws that come in the stock motor mount. You just reuse those screws if you want to. We put Loctite in those. I'd probably recommend doing that too. Obviously, just doesn't come loose. So yeah, that's pretty easy. And then this motor support in the rear works pretty well. So how this works is it's got these little spacers. I think you can probably see the lines between these. So you can use as many of these as you want, obviously, with your gear mesh. So you can just take some off. I think with the 25-35, we'll probably take one of those spacers, maybe 2 of those off to get it to sit right. Not quite sure. It's not going to be this high up. It's pretty high up right now, but yeah, so that's all adjustable. This is really easy to adjust. You just got the screws in here that come with it. So just, I think, I'm not sure what they're called, but just like the kind of rounded tops on them. So you got 4 of those, and then with little spacers in there. 12 those in. So right now we just got these 2, because at the high setting, actually, there's no way to get 4 in, because you're supposed to put some in the bottom, but it's so high up. So this is not how it's going to be, but this is kind of temporary just so we can get everything in and see how it looks. So I think the next thing is, I guess we can mount up the ESC right here. So this has got the QS8s. These are the Perfect Pass QS8s. I just soldered these on. Actually, with the Perfect Pass soldering iron that we just got. That thing's awesome. Highly recommend that. Yeah, but these are beefy connectors. I mean, I can show them next to the XT90s at some point, but they are really big. I think these are rated for 600 amps, so these are crazy for that. And then how the motor mount works, this M2C motor mount. So obviously not going to fit in the stock place with this big motor sticking all the way out there, but got this little piece, and then I think it just goes like this, mounts onto your receiver tray. You don't have the little wire clamp that just kind of goes on top of there, and then your ESC should just sit on top like that. So that's how it should work. I'm not sure how we're gonna route the wires. I have to look at that website. I think we might be able to just route them under here and then put this on top, or we can probably route them through just top of receiver box. But yeah, I think that's probably what we'll do next. And then also we got to get the servo, bell crank, all that stuff in this chassis brace. We still got a little ways to go. But I'm going to put this down next to the X-Max so you can kind of just see the comparison with what we have so far. All right, guys, you can see them right here, the XT on the right with the big wing and then the X-Max on the left. So wheelbase is actually pretty similar. These both have the sledgehammers. XG is a little bit longer, but not as long as I thought. Yeah, I thought it was longer than it is, but you can see the chassis is longer though, because you can kind of see the receiver box is more forward on the XRT. That kind of gives you the space for this motor mount, or the ESC mount, actually. So that's why it kind of fits inside like this. On the X-Max, there's no way for it to fit in here, so you kind of have to have this top brace, which works to support the top of the motor. It's why you don't have these guys right here. I mean, that works really good, looks nice. Honestly though, I think I would prefer the XRT setup with these supports right here, and then the ESC just sitting down flush like that. A little bit lower to the ground too. So I do like that. Both of them are great for M2C and hobby wing stuff. These got the same motors, 56, 118, 1100 kVs, both Max 6 G2s. I soldered the QS8s onto the X-Max too, so pretty much exact same electronic setup. Also, I forgot to mention, we also put the receiver in, just double-sided tape. This is a 5 GT5, and we got this little capacitor. I just got this off A-Main Hobbies, like $5. Reason I got these is, I think I've talked about this before a little bit, but on my Creighton, I had my Max 8 die. It got hot, I don't know, it died, but I only had it for about 5 or 6 months. Before then it ran perfectly, but I think what probably happened is, I think there's like a really high draw from my servo. I was kind of like racing, it was just getting hot, and something with the BEC voltage spiked from the Max 8 and just fried the power switch on it, and that's just what killed it. So I just decided we'd get these capacitors for all of them. Probably don't need it on this. I think the Max 5 is powerful enough that it shouldn't be a problem, but they're like $5 to get those. I put those in the Creightons too, just to kind of store the extra power so it doesn't burn up your servo or your power switch or any of that other stuff. So we've got that. Yeah, but other than that, yeah, they're pretty similar between X-Max and XRT. These are going to have pretty similar electronic setups. Just XRT is definitely a little bit wider. I don't know if you can tell from that, but XRT is definitely wider and considerably lower to the ground, even though they got the same tires. But yeah, so I think we'll get the ESC on. I'll show you guys, and then eventually we'll get the servo and everything else in there. Okay guys, so we're just putting the ESC in, so I'm going to show you how this works for a little bit. So this is the mount the ESC is going to sit on, so it kind of just sits in here like this. So the back screws into the old ESC screws, and then this screws into the receivers. This kind of replaces the wire clamp on the receivers, just know that. But, so I went ahead and kind of got the receiver wire kind of routed under here, just tied down so it doesn't move around, and then also the ESC wire so it's a good length. Kind of got the receiver box all cleaned up. And then when you're doing this, make sure you have to put in these screws that hold this bottom plate into like the top piece that the ESC actually sits on. Because once you put the ESC in, it's going to cover up these screws. So what you want to do is do these screws, then under here, put the ESC screws in. There's 4 of them. I think it's these 4 right like here. So you can do those 4 with just with the screws it comes with. It doesn't thread in super far into these ESCs, so just make sure don't put a screw that's too long. Pretty much the ones that come with are all that can go in there. So yeah, so you just want to go ahead and do that. And then once you get the ESC mounted up, you're going to want to just tighten this down on the receiver box. So I think we're going to mount the ESC facing this way with the battery wires kind of out to that side, and then the motor wires facing here. Probably doesn't matter which way you do it, but that's how we're going to do it. So yeah, we'll get that installed and show you. Okay, so we got everything mounted up. You can see it's looking pretty nice in there. Definitely quite the setup. The wires are a little bit too long. I might try and solder them and make them shorter, but they're not too bad. I got them zip tied down there. I think that should work pretty well. We ended up putting the ESC switch just right under the motor here. It is going to be lower down, but it will still have plenty of clearance with the gearing we're going to be running, so that should be fine. That's just nice and accessible there. The wire for that's not super long, so it's pretty much here if you've got a similar setup, or you can probably try and put it on the receiver box, but it's not flat and I was worried it was come off, so I don't want to do that. Or you could probably try and put it somewhere on the ESC. But we went with that. I guess here's another close look at the QS8s. These things are beefy. These are the perfect pass ones if you want to get some of those. Yeah, I recommend them. I haven't run them yet, but they look great. So yeah, this installs really well. You can see there's just barely enough space for that ESC to fit in, and then there's just enough space for these screws that go into the receiver box. The wire clamp kind of replaces that to fit in. So it's tight, but it does work. Yeah, we got the sensor wire coming up here, so it's looking good. We're starting to put the servo in, and I've realized that we are probably gonna have to take just these 4 screws to get the ESC out, because we're gonna have to thread the servo wire up. I'm pretty sure on the X-Max, the servo wire comes out inside the actual receiver box, not the wire clamp. But on the XRT, it comes out of the wire clamp. So if I'd known that, obviously I would have done it differently. If you're doing this, then yeah, I would go ahead and do your servo first, even though it's a little bit more annoying, but it's probably worth it to do that. So we'll get the servo out. We'll have to take this out, like I said, but we'll get the servo out, put servo in, and then start working on the belt crank, and I'll show you guys all that. Okay guys, we're actually gonna change gears a little bit here, literally, because this showed up. So this was supposed to get here for about a week, but got here early, so that's good, so we can get this thing finished. So yeah, these are the GPM kind of full assembly for the gears. This is the 35 tooth spur, and I thought I ordered the 25 tooth pinion, but it's actually the 20 tooth. You can see right there. It's not the end of the world. Yeah, I'm not sure, maybe I ordered the wrong thing. I thought I did, but I ordered the 25 tooth. But anyway, I have this 24 tooth that actually came with the gears I got for the X-Max, because it came with a 25 and a 24. So I'll just plug that in. That should work. We can change it around if we want. But so I'll get this open and then show you guys that assembled. Okay guys, so I got the old kind of slipper clutch or whatever assembly, just this guy out. So I get that out, you just gotta take this little wire cover out. Just make sure you put the longer screws more towards the inside. So right there. So yeah, I take this out, obviously I put this one in, but also we gotta swap over a few parts to get this on, to get all this stuff on. You can see the GPM stuff here. So I'm just gonna swap that stuff over and then show you kind of the comparison between them. Okay guys, I got everything swapped over. I just went ahead and installed it. So you can see it in there. That big gear actually just barely clears around there, but it does clear. I had to take off this little piece. This just kind of slides right there because it just doesn't quite fit. I don't think that's brown because we got this MTC motor mount that should cover up all of that. I mean, sorry, not motor mount, gear cover. So yeah, you just reuse this gear, the kind of that output from this or whatever, and then reuse 2 of the bearings. But the nice thing about this GPM one is it comes with this 3rd little brace with a bearing in it, which supports on this side. The stock one, I don't know, show you. With this shaft, there's no support on this side. So basically with these heavier gears on big landings, sometimes what can happen is it'll like flex in, and then since it's not braced on this side, it'll kind of bend, and it'll mess up your gear mesh, break your gears, all that kind of stuff. So that's really nice with this GPM one. There's other ones that do it, but something similar to this, you want a thing like this, third brace. So also, it was kind of annoying to get this thing in. I had to slide this motor mount over a little bit because it wouldn't quite fit in here. So yeah, just keep that in mind. It fits now, but it was kind of annoying to get that in. But yeah, these gears look really nice, the GPM ones. So yeah, you can see I put some grease in. I just used this Vanquish Products grease, this blue grease. That works pretty well. And then I put some Loctite on the growth screw in here on this spur gear. But I think I'm gonna get the pinion gear meshed up, put this cover back on, and then I'll show you guys. Okay guys, so I got the gear cover back on, it's all looking good, and I got the pinion on. So this is 24 tooth, like I mentioned before. One thing I want to note is that we learned with the X-Max, even with this big 2.5mm grub screw in there in Loctite, the pinion gear can still come off. So make sure you put a ton of Loctite on there, really tighten that thing down. And what I found that works is if you put some Loctite on the actual shock shaft, the motor shaft, and then put it on the grub screw and then tighten it down, that helps because it hasn't come off on the X-Max since. So just make sure you're aware of that. But now and I also took off this rear support just so I can lower it down to get the mesh right. So basically, this is what's kind of cool with this M2C thing is this little piece here that it comes with is how you adjust the mesh. So, sorry, just a second. Let me get this set up. So basically, this little thing has a little ball end at the end, which goes into this little kind of cutout. So if you slide this little ball end into there, this can come down, and then this is a 3mm hex. So if you just get one of those guys, and then I might have to pull this down for a second, but if you just start tightening that, it should bring it up, and then now this will actually move your motor up. So once it gets tight, okay, so now it's starting to move it up. So we can look at this for how tight we want our mesh. This actually might be a little bit too less. Kind of gotta play around with it for a second. But we obviously want it tight, but not super tight. That's gonna cause some other problems. So that might be a little bit too tight. So yeah, I'm just gonna play around with that, make sure I get it right. And then once you do, you can take these screws that come with it with these washers and just screw them into there. So there's 4 of those. So I'll get the mesh up and then show you, and then I'm gonna get the rear brace back on to the right height. Okay guys, I got this mounted up, so let's start with the rear brace. For the rear brace, I had to put this all the way down, so I don't have to use any of these little spacer guys, but this all the way down. Obviously, if we gear up, I'm gonna save these because we might have to move it up a little bit. But yeah, it's just on the lowest setting. Just know with that, obviously, since this isn't super like a lot of like fine adjustability. I mean, it's kind of like these relatively kind of big bumps with the this support piece, that your motor doesn't have to be like at all times resting directly on this. That's it. Like, this motor mount's strong enough for all these braces. It's strong enough to support it like kind of like normal situations, kind of just like hold it up. The rear support is really just for like if you're hitting big jumps. You don't want like when your motor has a lot of force pushing it down, you don't want it just going straight through the chassis, or you know what I mean, and bending this. So this is just kind of on big jumps, because if the chassis flexes a little bit like it's supposed to with the plastic, this will kind of support it a little bit. So obviously you don't want a big gap. It's never gonna be able to kind of help, but yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. This sits pretty flush on there. Yeah, this little piece right here works well. It's kind of a cool design. I don't know if you guys could really see that when I was filming it too well, but yeah, it works well. I got the 4 screws in here, 2 on the other side too. So the mesh looks good. You can see there's just a little bit of wobble it'll allow, but I can still get a piece of paper through, but not much more than that. I guess I can probably put you around to there. You can see there's just a little bit of wobble, but not so much that it's slipping out, but not so tight that it's gonna overheat. So I'm really happy with that mesh. With that, the motor and ESC setup's all done. Also, the switch just barely clears now. I thought we'd have more room, but yeah, this is pretty low down. So yeah, it can definitely support bigger gearing. This is probably about as low as you can go with this motor because you can't put the brace any lower than that. And you definitely want to run this big motor with that brace or you're gonna have some problems. So 2435 is about as low as you can go. 2535 would work. I'm sure you could fit 3035. You can see how much space I have in here. So 3035 definitely fit. Maybe even 3030. I'm not sure. I'm sure MTC has stuff on their website, but yeah. 2435 should be a good starting point. We'll run cool, and then if we want some more speed, we can always gear up. So I'm gonna get the MTC motor mount. Sorry, I keep calling it the motor mount. The gear cover on. If you're gonna do this, you probably want something like this because the stock gear cover is just not big enough to close in all of this. We got a similar setup on the X-Max. We ran it for a little bit without that because we hadn't ordered the part yet, and you just get a lot of rocks and stuff and just chewing the gears up and just loud. It's just kind of noisy and stuff. So I get this like 20 bucks on the MTC. So I'm gonna install this and kind of show you how it works. It's kind of a cool design. It's kind of a 2-piece design, so I'll show you that. All right, guys. So here's the first part of that gear cover installed. So you can see this. The reason it's two-part design. Two-part design is because they have to have a place to screw the screw that goes right down there, right where the wrench is, the hex driver's going in. So that's just why it's 2-part, because if they didn't, there's no way to get that in. So yeah, this is pretty nice because obviously you can fit the big gears, and it's got these little metal pieces that kind of fit into here. So when you screw the second part on, you're not screwing plastic to plastic, you're screwing into metal, which makes it a little bit stronger. I will note that on the X-Max with this similar kind of setup, it was really hard to get these little metal pieces in because there's kind of some like old or plastic like residue from when it was printing or whatever, but on the XRT one it was a lot better. So also the other thing is with this GPM part for the third bearing, it kind of messes up the fitment of this gear cover just a little bit. I don't know if you can see it, but it just raises up just a little bit. It's not really a problem. You might get maybe a tiny bit of dust in there, but that doesn't really matter as long as you're not getting big rocks. So, but just thought I'd show you that, but not really an issue. So now with that, I'm just gonna put this top piece on, just 2 screws that come with it, and then we'll be done with the motor and ESC, all electronics. It's just, well, we gotta do the servo. So it's just the servo, that part, and this big chassis brace. And there might be a few other things, but getting pretty close, guys. So yeah, we'll be good. All right, guys, real quick. So I got this on. You can see that covers that up. All the gears really nice. Yeah, definitely a good part, well made by MTC. Like all this stuff in here. So we got all this finished. Real quick, I just wanted to show you the car on the ground, just because I was just making sure it was fitting right. But you can hear the gears like that. This thing, it's meshed right. The gears just loud. This thing's gonna sound freaking awesome in here. You're definitely gonna hear this thing from a while away on the racetrack or hidden jump. So yeah, I'm gonna get working on the servo, finish that up hopefully. I know on the X-Max, the servo and bell crank and all that stuff was the most tedious part, but I guess get working on it. Okay guys, so I've got the servo installed. I gotta trim the servo ears a little bit more, but it's in there. I just gotta kind of clean it up a little bit. And you can see the front end's off. That's because you gotta take that off to get the bell crank off. So here's the bell crank, stock one, and then we got this M2C upgrade one. So this is just gonna kind of swap onto there. So if you're wondering how to get it off, it's a little bit complicated to get the front end off, but you got basically 8 screws, so it'll be easier if I show you on here. So you've got 1, 2, 3 on each side, so that's 6. And then you've got these 2 right here. Yeah, it's those 2. So it's those 8, and then you got to take this part off that kind of holds the top of the bell crank off. But to get to these screws, you got to take these kind of where the clipless body mounts to get this center piece off, and you got to unscrew the steering links. So it's a lot of screws, but you'll get there eventually, I guess. So I'm just kind of gonna swap over these plastic parts to these M2C ones. So once I do that, I'll show you. Okay guys, so that's how that looks. All swapped over, so pretty much you just gotta swap out the bearings, and then this piece right here goes on that guy, and then the smaller piece, where is it at? Here we go. So this goes on there. So if you're ever wondering how these servo savers work, basically, you have these kind of parts that are kind of slotted in like this, and you have the spring, but yeah, if you have enough force, these will kind of slide past each other, this top piece. But yeah, so that's kind of how that works, just to kind of absorb the impact. I also went ahead and put on a thicker servo spring, so you can see the stock one. This one's just a little bit thicker for more powerful servos. It'll just give it a little more power, so you've kind of more power over your steering. Also went ahead and put a longer screw with a nut on the bottom on this. How it comes, there's just a kind of short screw that just barely long enough to thread in there. The longer screw with the nut would just make it so it doesn't come loose, because if this comes loose, then obviously it's kind of gonna mess up your steering. You're not gonna need power. So yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty much that for the bell crank. I'm gonna get the front end assembled and just kind of get it back on the car, and then I'm gonna get the servo finished up. Okay guys, so I got the front end mounted back on. So the bell crank's looking nice in there. You can see it right there. Steering's really nice, kind of smooth with that AGF servo. Here, I'll flip this guy around. Show you. So servo's in there just like that. I trimmed down the servo horn so it'll clear that center drive shaft, so you can see that. That fits in there really nice. And then I'm just gonna put this top gear cover back on and then get the center brace on. All right, so I got the chassis brace on there. That thing's looking pretty sweet. It's the MTC logo in there. That went on pretty easy. This kind of cover that goes below the brace was kind of hard to get on. I kind of just knock it in there. Make sure you trim your servo ears. The servo ears, or it'll hit with this. So I also went ahead and put the drive cup braces in there. You can see, right, these things. So I put that on all 4 sides. To do that, you gotta take your tires off, and then you gotta take this hinge pin, the lower one, and it helps if you take your lower shock mount off. That's just a little pin there. So some people put Loctite in those to make them stay. I didn't, just because if I was worried that if I put Loctite in there, I might not be able to get them off. So I just kind of press fit them on there. So yeah, I think I'm gonna turn this thing on, show you guys how it works. Okay, so I got everything plugged in, got the Flaska GT5 hooked up to this thing. So let's talk about the batteries. So these are the Power Hobby 4S 9000 milliamps. These have like the special SI graphene stuff. I'm not sure if I talked about the batteries, but these are great. We have similar ones in the X-Max. The only difference with these is these have 8 gauge wires and then come with the QS8s. I put QS8s on other ones, but they have 10 gauge wires. So these batteries are definitely really nice. The way I'm setting them up right now will probably change this, but I just have them in the back just so it's not too much wire, because in the front there's so much wire that it's kind of like hard to deal with that. So when I started them, I probably should have cut them a little bit shorter, but fits nice like this. The motor wires are all wrapped up there. Motor and ESC are looking nice, so I guess I'll turn this thing on. So you can see the ESC fan going, and see the steering on this thing. Pretty dang good for an XRT with those big sledgehammers. So I think I already bumped up the BEC on this. before we started. I think I got the ESC programmed. I'm pretty sure. So I think that's on the 8.4, but still really impressive. And then yeah, we got throttle. You can see that thing sounds mean with those gears. So yeah, it works. I guess we can get the body on here. And yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. I think that's gonna be the end of this video. We're gonna go drive this thing and see what it's got soon. So expect a video with that. But thanks for watching.